Hey everybody. Hey everybody. Welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. With me as always is my co-host and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink. The first slam is done. And as I usually do when I'm super, super proud and excited about this time, a first time winner, standing ovation, Miss Madison Keys. Congratulations to her and her new husband slash coach, Bjorn Frantangelo, who's when he was on the tour, and I know he still is one of the nicest guys out there. Maddie Keys, congratulations.
Listen, how many times have you and I had these discussions through the years about how exasperating it can be to see her lose these hard fought close contests and somehow her nerve will go in the crunch. Obviously, the classic example was a couple of years ago at the Open in the semis against the same woman she beat here, Sabalenka, where she was up 6-love, 5-3, and served for the match at 5-4 in the second set. She was 3 points away and eventually lost that match despite having 4-2 in the third. So that seemed to be almost symbolic of her plight for a long, long time. You felt like the ability was there, but did she have the nerve? Could she come through in the crunch? And did she ever in this tournament? What a spectacular fortnight, David.
And I mean, you could tell how well liked she is on tour. Both male, female players were so happy that she won it. Congratulations across every aspect of the tour, tournament organizers, coaches, players. And you said it right. Like, I'll be the first to admit, and it wasn't just me, it wasn't just you, it was a lot of people. We knew her top flight, Steve, could play with anyone. She could take people's rackets out of their hands, right? But the frustration was the peaks and valleys with her, right? And that was always the most frustrating thing because we knew top flight, she could beat anybody. And
Yeah.
Sabalenka, with how powerful she is, Maddie, with her height, strength, and power, she was able to counter that. And I mean, the 2017 U.S. Open final against Sloane, she killed her opponent in the semi. Did not play well in the final there. She's come close. You mentioned the crazy semi in New York 2 years ago. The 6-0-5-3 lead winds up losing the second and third sets in a tiebreak. She said something that was really, really interesting to me. And maybe it's because my mom's a psychotherapist, but she said in the presser after, a little while ago, she allowed herself to be okay with her career if she never won a slam. And it's amazing when people, and this isn't just in sports, you can walk, any walk across life. If you can take off that self-induced pressure off your shoulders and just play and just do the work and just whatever it is you're doing, take a little of that self-induced pressure off. It's amazing how naturally things can just happen. And boy, did they do. I mean, Steve, she beat. Look, I
But
mean, look at the
just a
player.
quick,
She's won what?
just a quick interjection, if I may, before you go on. I do want to say regarding that one final round appearance she had before against Sloane at the 2017 U.S. Open, she was hurt. I watched that match. I honestly believe she would have defaulted had it not been the finals of the U.S. Open, playing against a good friend and just not wanting to spoil it for the crowd. But her mobility was so restricted that day. She won 3 games, barely winning points at one stage, and it just was not her. And I think people have a misconception when they look at the score and they think, "Well, she got killed. She couldn't handle it." That was really not true. Maybe it would have played out that way, but there was some kind of an injury. And I remember we knew about it. We saw it happen in the semis. She got through the semi fine, but it was like you knew. I mean, Sloane played very, very well and earned her US Open triumph, but that was not the essential Madison Keys. I just want to throw that in because so many years have gone by. It's been over 7 years, and somehow the history gets rewritten, and people tend to think that that was maybe her fault, that she couldn't handle the occasion. I really don't think that was it at all, because physically she was just a shadow of her normal self.
No, that's important to note, and I appreciate you stating that for everybody. When you talk about earning a slam, my God, she beat Rybakina, and y'all heard Goran Ivanisevic announce he's splitting with her. That got to be, again, unfortunately, a whole mess when she tried to get her previous coach, who has been, banned from WTA. And we all knew as soon as that started to come back in, Goran wasn't going to stick around for much longer. But Madison beats Rybakina, Svitolina, Swiatek, Sabalenka. And I mean, the tournament before, she beat Pagula and a number of players. She's not 12-0. She's 5-0 against top 10 players this year. The match against Swiatek was incredible. She wins 5-7, 6-1, 7-6. She faces a match point, Steve. I mean, the breaker itself, that last set was extraordinary. The breaker, she's down 7-8 and comes up with two huge serves, one ace and one unreturnable. Served 69%, which was critical, Steve, because she wasn't winning her second serve points. She was only winning 33% of her second serve point. She served so well, and she held her nerve so well. There was three times in that final set, 30 all games, and she came through on her terms, winning it.
Yes, but also what happened in the final set. And the final set reminded me in some ways of the final set of the final against Sabalenka. In the set, it was so hard fought and on serve. But at 5-all in the third against Swiatek, Keys lost her serve, finally got broken. So that was Swiatek serving for the match with the match point at 40-30. And Keys had a terrific return down the middle with enough pace that she forced Swiatek to go into one of those knee bends, and she couldn't make the backhand, Iga. Couldn't clear the net. And then an incredible return at deuce from Keys deep into the forehand corner of Swiatek, a backhand return, sort of an inside out from the deuce court that forced Swiatek into an error. And then Iga double faulted. That was an amazing turnaround leading into the tiebreak, the super tiebreak. But then the super tiebreak was equally astonishing because Swiatek is up 3-1, 4-2, 5-3, 6-4, 7-5. Even up 8-7. So she had the lead all the way up until Keys hit that ace, serving at 7-8, followed by a service winner wide in the deuce court to make it 9-8. And then Iga cracked a little bit and missed a forehand on the match point. So I don't know which one was more remarkable.
Yeah, I have to correct myself, Steve. I have all my notes written so close. The three times in the deciding set at 30-all was in the final, not the semi versus Iga.
The final, right. But the point is that she did finally get broken and somehow broke back, saving the match point. And it was not a bad serve. It was kind of a body serve from Iga that Keys was able to fend off and hit deep down the middle. So great effort. And then to follow that with all those comebacks in the super tiebreak.
It was crazy. Absolutely, Steve. And you hit on it. It was crazy. I mean, to not crack. She had so many deficits in that breaker. And again, I mean, you get to now the leads that you've talked about, and then it's 7-8, and she's got two serves. You better win those both points, Stephen. Boy, she didn't have to hit a second ball.
Those are two great serves. Both of them wide in the ad court for the ace, right in the corner, and then a nice sort of calculated. I think she knew when she hit that serve that took her to 9-8. It wasn't going to be an ace, but it was so good there was no way that Swiatek could keep the return in play as she went forehand down the line long. So,
but to have that weapon in those, I mean, you see it in the men's game a lot. To have that weapon at those clutch points makes life so much easier. You don't have to worry about hitting 7, 8, 9, 10 balls in a huge point. I mean,
yes,
so
but the old Keys of a couple years ago, I'm not so sure she comes up with those serves at that time.
Agreed.
That's not a knock on her. Happens to a lot of players, but that ability to suddenly decide, as you alluded to, that she didn't have to win a minute, to take the pressure off of herself by deciding that she could live with herself if she never won a major, was probably what won it for her.
Yeah.
And very few players are able to take that attitude and translate it into victory. She did that. And then the final, I mean, she got off to a great start in the final, David, against Sabalenka, who's going for her third title in a row. And Keys, before you know it, is at 5-1. And then Sabalenka made her move. She won a couple of games and closed the gap to 5-3 before losing her own serve. And it's a 6-3 set for Keys, but not quite as convincing as it might have been had she closed it out 6-1. And I think that momentum carried Sabalenka through the second set. She had her teeth into the match. And she played a really good second set, started using a lot of drop shots. She took over in the second set. And again, this is what makes it so remarkable. You figure that having happened, and Sabalenka is now one set away from a third title in a row. But the beauty of it was that Keys was serving first in the final set. And you alluded to those love 30, 15, 30, 30 all. There were a bunch of tough service games, but she never got down break point.
Nope, three times in that
And
set she had 30 all. Three
finally
times she had 30
at
all.
15-30 though, at 5 all, that was a great sequence there where she did not. She played 3 great points in a row to hold her serve, and then played a magnificent game to close it out, and ended it all with a forehand winner inside out, beautifully controlled, that just left Sabalenka frozen in her tracks on the match point at 5-6. So
that was the only break in the set, right? At 6-5.
Yeah, it all came down to that one break. And again, I don't think Sabalenka's level dropped from where she had lifted it in the second set. That's what made this victory so extraordinary. Is I don't think she said it wasn't the. For instance, it was not the Sabalenka we saw losing to Coco Gauff in the U.S. Open Finals, where she was making, clusters of errors and getting flustered, and you could see it. She was feeling it, and Coco beat her in 3, but there was no doubt there was some self-destructing going on from Sabalenka. Not the case here. She actually played a first-rate final set, but it was not good enough to win.
I thought the final was extraordinary, like you said, from both players, and boy, did Maddie earn it. In the final, she served 67% first serve. And again, with the semi was 69, the final was 67. And the type of match, especially against Sabalenka, you have to hit a ton of first serves because it's such early first ball strike tennis that if you're hitting a lot of second serves, Sabalenka is going to be on the attack from the get-go after she hits her return.
Yeah, and also, David, totally agree. And in turn, I actually think Swiatek played much better than she's played on hard courts in a long time in a big match. It was not a bad performance from her either. In fact, it's hard to distinguish, hard to separate or make a choice between Keys' performance against Swiatek or against Sabalenka. They
different players, totally different styles too.
Totally different styles, but what was required of her each time was it was a remarkable effort. Her level was extraordinarily high against both players. Oh. I don't know how she'd look at it. It's more remarkable the final because you're playing for the title by then, but still, the way she could survive from match point down against a good informed Swiatek who had been destroying every opponent she played. She'd been blitzing through what was a very good draw, but still it was impressive. And then to beat Sabalenka, who can almost taste that third title in a row. And you saw Sabalenka's reaction. I want to defend Sabalenka on one point. After the match, David, she smashed her racket. She was very gracious in greeting Keys at the net, and then went over to where her changeover chair was and smashed her racket. I really understand that. That was the frustration of just losing a very hard-fought, close contest that could have gone either way. Comes back out for the presentation and was very gracious again. So I really don't think she should be sharply criticized for that because it was an agonizing loss, and she knew that Keys deserved it in the end. She just was frustrated to come that close and not get her third crown in a row.
I agree 100% with you, Stephen. She even said, I needed to do that real quick to get it out of my system so I can give the on-court interview. Again, they don't have any space where they can go hide for a little bit. They're right on the court.
The other thing she did, I'm sorry to interrupt, David. The other thing I just don't want to leave out is she put the towel over her head so she could cry without people having to see it and, again, get that release. So I really cut her plenty of slack on that. I feel like it was perfectly understandable. And frankly, I think too often fans and reporters both are inclined to be very critical of players for smashing rackets. I don't think it's the worst thing, particularly under these circumstances.
They're stuck on the court, Steve. Other sports, the losing team gets to go into the locker room and has some privacy. This sport, you don't get that. So
yeah. No, but I thought she handled herself, all told, she handled herself remarkably well. And I give her high marks for that.
And Steve, you and I are both given, awesome accolades to Maddie Keys right now and for winning this tournament. But you and I, let's say she lost to Swiatek, or let's say she won that and lost to Sabalenka, and she played these matches like she did, and it was just 1 or 2 points, which both these matches were, we would still be talking very highly of Madison Keys. Her level was ridiculously high throughout this
tournament. We would, I agree, but we might have been saying now, oh my God, that was her chance. If only she could have taken her chance. Now I look at it differently. Now I don't think it's at all unreasonable to think that she's got a decent shot at winning one or two more in the next couple of years. I mean, I don't.
Yes.
We shouldn't ask too much of her, but I would not be a bit shocked if she won a second major or possibly a third.
And our previous frustration with her was the peaks and valleys. I mean, if
Yeah,
she lost to Iga or Sabalenka, it wasn't because she played really, really poorly at all. I mean, those two
yeah.
matches were phenomenal by everybody involved. So, Madison Keys, so happy for you. Sometimes you appreciate it more when it doesn't come right away, right? Sometimes you hop on tour, you win one when you're 17, 18, 19 years. You think it's just one of the things you do and you come to expect it. Maybe you do appreciate it a little more when you've been close, you didn't get it, you now may think it never happens, and then boom, look what these last 2 weeks have been.
Yeah, and she's almost 30. And in this day and age, we've seen more and more players now able to play great tennis in the first half of their 30s. And so there's no reason to think she doesn't have at least three really top years left, peak years left. So in that span, it'll be fascinating to watch her. And she, that old expression, getting the monkey off your back, whatever you want to call it, she now will have. I don't think she's going to feel the same. I don't think she's suddenly going to start feeling the pressure again if she gets within striking distance of another major. I think she'll feel like I can do this. I've done it before. And she'll know that the worst thing that can ever happen to her, she'll end her career having won a major.
I mean, look at that. That's such a good pressure release that she can have that in her memory bank at the next tight moment. So, awesome, just awesome. Congratulations, Madison Keys. Jannik Sinner, we have not forgotten about you. It was just a little bit less drama on the men's side. Three consecutive hard court majors now, 21 matches in a row when you go Australia, U.S. Open, Australia. Didn't face a break point today, Steve. He's one of three players to do that in a final. Federer did it in 2003, Wimbledon. Rafa did it in 2017, French Open.
But I want to make a
Jannik,
point about that, if I may. I was fascinated by that as well. But let's think about it. Philippoussis and Anderson. Neither Rafa beat Anderson. Roger beat Philippoussis. Neither
yeah.
one really known for their returns. Zverev is known as a pretty decent returner.
He was a second seed, Steve. Second seed.
Second seed, but you look at his returning capabilities, his wide wingspan with his height is 6'6", 6'7", and I've seen him return very well again. He's not the best returner in the sport, but it's shocking to think that he could never have one break point in the match. Now he came close to getting them, but he never quite got there. Amazing stat.
It really was, and I mean, obviously, we haven't talked about on the quarterfinal yet between Novak and Carlos. That was an intriguing match too. I know in the fourth set, 4-2 Novak up a break. He had a point that could have gotten the second break, and they played an amazing point. Carlos wins. He winds up holding. You think, oh boy, now he's back in it. It's still a breakdown, but that point was agonizingly like fatiguing to both players. You thought that may have flipped the script in that match. It didn't. Novak held on his nerve, and my God, I mean, what Novak just continues to marvel. Unfortunately, he couldn't get through the semi with the tear. He lost first set. What was it, an hour and 26 minutes to Zverev, and then he had to default. Where do you see this season heading now with Novak?
Well, I think he comes away. He felt he took away a lot of positives. First of all, he had the good wins, really solid straight set wins over Mahac and Lehechka, the two Czechs. Those were good. Those guys are playing really well. That told him that his level was rising. Then he's playing a good first set against Carlos. He was actually up an early break at 2-love, and Carlos broke back, and they go to 4-all. And that's where he hurt his leg. That's where the hamstring injury occurred, in the 4-all game. So he had a medical timeout. They come back, and Carlos serves out the set at love. It's an easy hold. So at that stage, it's not looking good. But then from that point on, Djokovic got stronger and stronger. He had a break lead, 3-love in the second. Carlos came back. Novak closed it out 6-4. And then those last two sets were gems. And by then, the painkillers kicked in, and he was moving just beautifully and kind of orchestrating the match.
Served wide to Carlos a ton of times. Served wide to the deuce court.
Yeah, the wild, not just on first serve, but second serve. Bigger second serves than usual. first thing he did was start hitting the ball harder off the ground because he wasn't sure of his movement. But then gradually, by the time he got past the second set into the middle of the third, he had options to either hit hard or just outmaneuver him in the points. But all along, he was going for that second serve, and he won about 60% of his second serve points. Astounding serving performance. And I think coming off that match, he really thought he was going to win the tournament. And on the other hand, he knew that this injury was no joke. So he took the 2 days off, didn't practice, didn't hit a ball until about an hour before he met Zverev. And he was sort of bluffing his way through that first set. I thought he did his best to hang in there. And Sasha may have been a bit tight. And I think he knew that Novak was hurting. And there were tricky things going on in his mind and Novak's. And finally, when Djokovic lost the tiebreak 7-5, he walked right up to the net and shook hands. But I would say he's feeling very good. He feels like he's going to get one of these 3 remaining majors. I think his first order is just heal, get over this injury. They say that for some players, it can take 2 months to heal from a hamstring tear like this. He's had similar things in the past, including twice in Australia. He had problems where he got through the tournament in 21 and 23. I feel like he'll probably recover sooner. But even if he doesn't, even if it took 2 months, that's still only going to, we're still only looking at, say, early April, and he'd be ready for the clay court season and ready to make a go at the French. I think he's feeling very good about himself and where he's headed, because that was some of the best tennis he's played. He hadn't played that well in a slam since 23. And the only thing I can think of last year that compared to it was beating Carlos in the final of the Olympics in 2 tiebreaks. So he's in a good place. Just a few more words, if I may, David, because we kind of glossed over the final a little bit, if you don't mind. I'd like to just make a few comments about Sinner's performance in the final, because you could see that Sasha was a bit off. His backhand was not the normal tried and true stroke we've seen. We think of that as the mainstay of his game. His backhand was a bit off today, and he was struggling off the forehand, which is not uncommon. Served okay, but he was under pressure throughout the first set. And finally at 3-4, he lost his serve in a long game. And then Sinner served out easily to close out the set. The second set was much closer. And at the end of that set, that's where Sinner had his best opportunities. Because, that's where Zverev had his best opportunities. Because Sinner was serving at 4-5, love 30, but then served his way out of that rather beautifully. And a couple of good wide serves in the deuce court, one wide one in the ad, a swing volley winner, and he just won 4 points in a row to take himself out of trouble. Then at 5-6, Sinner was at 30 all, and they had a spectacular point where he drew Zverev in with a drop shot, then lob volleyed over him, and then Zverev scampered back, put up a good lob, got himself back in the point, came back up to the net again, but was unable to put away a backhand volley. He tried to angle it off, and Sinner passed him down the line. So that could have been set point for Zverev with Sinner serving at 5-6. Instead, it was game point. He held on. They go to the tie break, and Zverev had a nice mini break up at 2-1, but lost the next 2 points on his serve. And finally, at 4-all, it was a dead let cord winner from Sinner. Very fortunate. They got him to 5-4, and he closed it out from there. And then there was not much doubt in the third. But I think everybody was kind of hoping Zverev can get the second set just for the suspense of the match. Still don't think he would have won, but it would have been nice to see it go to 1 set all. But I just want to all credit to Sinner, who's now won the last 3. He won the Australian last year, the U.S. Open last year, now this. So he's got the last 3 hard court majors. He's one less major than Carlos now, reaffirming his status as the best player in the world. And now, of course, the biggest worry he has is the steroid, the charges against him, the case coming up in April. But if that can go his way and he doesn't get a suspension, this is going to be a spectacular season for him, because I can't see how he doesn't win at least 1 more major this year, and maybe 2.
Yeah, he's playing unbelievable tennis right now. So let's see what I do want to ask you about Zverev a little bit, because he's been really, really consistent and has gotten late stages in a lot of slams now, including, 3 finals?
Yes.
I think he's going to win one, Steve. I really do. And he may win more than one. Let me ask you, what do you think he's going to get one?
I go back and forth on it. I thought, like you did, I thought he had a decent shot. I was picking Sinner, but I felt like I wasn't going to be a bit surprised if he won, because he was so rested. He'd had only the one set against Novak. He lost one set the rest of the way in the tournament. He was cruising through his matches. So unlike the usual fortnight at Grand Slam events where we see Zverev go through a lot of rigor and long matches, but that some of them,
Tommy made it interesting a little bit. Had set points in the first
yeah,
and second set, but yeah,
Tommy had, at set point in the
not
first
set
set.
point. He had a set point, but he was serving for both first and
Well,
second.
yeah, but the first set he served for it and had a set point on his own serve. Second set he served for it, didn't hold, but then had a set point on Sasha's serve in the next game. So that's why Zverev said afterwards, I could have been down 2-0.
Yes.
But Zverev, to his credit, he won both those sets in tie breaks. He played 15 points. He won 14 of them. He lost 1 point in 2 tie breaks. But my point is, even that physically, that could have been a much longer match. That was his toughest, but he won it easily in the fourth. There's a very quick 4 sets. So all told, he didn't go through the usual amount of physical strain that he does. So he had a lot left physically today, but his game just wasn't fully there, and Sinner played really well. So to answer your question, I see it as almost a 50-50 proposition, because Sinner and Carlos are going to be winning most of the majors for the next couple of years. I believe Novak is going to get at least one more here. But Sinner and Alcaraz are going to get better. They're going to get better and better, and they're going to be more and more confident on the premier stages. So he's going to need some help to not have to try to beat both of them in one tournament. He's capable. I'm not ruling him out. I could see 1 or 2 along the way, but I could just as easily see it not going his way. And I feel like it's this one. And he was very remorseful after this one. He was very teary, and Sinner was terrific with him and consoling him and giving him a hug. And also what he said in the presentation ceremony about, he said to him, he turned to Zverev and said, you're going to win one of these. You will, believe in yourself. And then Djokovic sent him something on social media very similar about believing in himself. And I think that's going to help him to hear a couple of his great rivals and friends saying that about him. But you felt like he was down on himself afterwards.
Yeah.
I even felt it after the semi with Novak, where he kind of semi-joked about it, winning a close set, knowing that Novak was hurt, maybe joking about it. I guess I'm just not good enough. And so I feel like he didn't come into the final necessarily in the best frame of mind. I don't know what to expect, because we know he's going to keep getting the latter stages. Yes. He's going to beat there's so many guys he can beat that are going to take him into the semis and maybe the finals of these events. But it's never going to be easy with the guys that he's going to have to get through in those finals. That's why I say 50-50. I don't want to rule it out, but I'm not confident about it either. What makes
right? And Rafa, Roger, and Novak made it look like winning slams was so easy. We know it's not. Now you got Sinner and Carlos getting, the next generation of getting some slams in. I would put.
Yeah, David, tell me I'm curious to get your point of view here, because you started it off by saying you think he will. Tell me the basis of your view. I want to get your point of view on this.
I think he will. So, if you take a look at, let's say him and Medvedev already had one, but I would put him way closer to Medvedev than, let's say, a Rublev and Tsitsipas right now, because they're kind of going in a downward spiral. Hopefully they get back to the level that they can play at. I'm a believer in any sport. If you give yourself enough cracks at it, you're going to get one. You just have to keep going. You see it in all the sports. You see coaches not get to a Final Four, or coaches not win a national championship or an NBA championship. Well, you know what? If you keep giving yourself shots at it, one time you're going to be able to knock down that door. And I think because he's so consistent and plays latter stages at slams, he's going to give himself a lot. I won't say a lot more looks, but he's going to give himself several more looks late in slams, and I think one of those times he's going to get it.
Yeah, fair point. I get the argument. That's why I'm so torn. What worries me, though, and I saw it again today, David, they talk a lot. Jim Courier raves about it. Andy Roddick does. Why shouldn't they? The first serve percentage of Zverev is astounding. He's always at around 70 or above.
Yeah,
and yet he has such a big serve. And you look at the numbers going up on the clock at the back of the court. You see 218 kilometers, 212, 214. He's always so often in the 130s. And say, but then I also watch Tommy Paul and Novak, and then today Sinner, and how often they're able to get first serve returns back in play. My gripe is I'd like to see him going for more aces, and maybe the first serve percentage goes down to 58 or 60, but he's getting extra free points because he's going more for the lines or going, not a matter of going bigger because the speed is there, but going closer to the lines where he's got a chance to serve aces. He doesn't seem to like to take that risk. I'd like to see that change. And my other concern is just the forehand. Today just happened to be it was a bad backhand day by his standards. But the forehand worries me in a lot of occasions. And for a guy in his elite class, it's probably one of the more vulnerable forehands in the game. If you compare it to Sinner, I know Carlos can be a little streaky off that side, but he makes up with all his brilliance. And then you have Novak, who's pretty much rock solid off that side. So I worry a bit about that. But I also take your point because I have no doubt the semis are going to be there probably pretty regularly still, and he'll get to a few more finals. The question is, can he actually win them?
Yep, that's the question. Well, again, congratulations, Jannik Sinner and Madison Keys and Maddie and Bjorn. It's always good to see great things happen to good people. Jannik, Maddie, the teams around them. Both extraordinary performances, viewed a little bit differently, with Jannik already having some in his back pocket. More to come for him. Maddie, the struggle to get back to where she was, several other times. Again, I mean, you remember her crying at that press conference at the U.S. Open against Sabalenka when she was so agonizingly close to winning that match. And this sport's brutal, but when things go right, it's also the most beautiful sport in the world, I think. And I know that's why you and I love it so much. So,
well, the other nice thing about this, David, just to tack on to what you're saying, is that think how often you and I, at the end of majors, we tend to sort of hone in and talk more about the men. And the men tend to dominate the news for a variety of reasons. A lot of it had to do with this incredible era of the three iconic players and Roger, Rafa, Novak. A lot of factors go in, but the men have been the talk of these tournaments. This time, it was Matty Key's tournament. Take nothing away from Sinner to win his third major and his second straight Australian, but she's the one that everybody's going to come away from this fortnight talking about, even casual fans of tennis. And I don't know about you, I got emails from friends, family members. They were all so excited about the story and about her. So I tip my hat to Matty Keys, because what she did was not only a victory for herself, but for women's tennis and for the game.
So true. Let's end it with that, because I could not have said it any better than you did. Madison Keys, this day is yours. Enjoy it, and hope you can really take some time off for a couple of weeks and let this all soak in, because you deserve it. And with that, Steve, great first slam. Great first slam. We got eager to see how the rest of the year goes. And again, we got 3 more slams to go. We got several big tournaments coming our way. We'll be in Delray soon. So I got to get out of this cold weather. We'll be at that ATP 250 in a couple weeks, and we'll continue on.
Okay, David, enjoyed it as always.